Welcome back to AI War 2. This will be the final episode of the Neinzul Abyss preview series. Items that we have not looked at yet that are on the agenda. Quick starts that are currently available in the expansion. The map types. Additional AI types that are coming. Additional Strikecraft and Frigates that you can acquire. And some of the AI eyes that are available to them to be seated in the galaxy. So to start off, the quick starts. There are two presently, again, more intended to be added by the launch of the expansion. And we have the Hidden Badger and the Iron Badger. Both are taking advantage of some of the random factions options. So, two AIs on the Squares map. You've got the Hide Unexplored Planets, or as it says here, Hidden Galaxy mode. That's been activated. And there's other hostile factions that you discover as you go out through the map. You gotta kind of be flexible with that. Then the Iron Badger is doing something similar to AI's Cubular map. It's Iron Man mode, so that's different. But again, random factions are out there for you to discover, and each playthrough of this then will be quite a bit different than the one before. This group of ships here are the human free agents, the new frigates, 4 of them, and 5 Strikecraft that are available in the expansion. So let's take a look at what these are going to potentially add. We have the Corrosive Frigate, corrosive weapon type of course, area of effect, and it has attack bonus against targets that are moderate to light armor, so fairly generalist, but heavy armor ships will be more effective at resisting what it does, splash tech, and medium hull. Then we have the Samurai Frigate, a medium hull melee frigate, and that's a big deal, because I think that there are currently no melee frigates in the game prior to the expansion. So that was really a hole they wanted to fill in, and this should do the trick. Don't ask me how a spaceship wields a katana against its enemies, but I'll leave that to your imagination. You got Vampirism to heal itself some based on the damage it's doing, and a big attack bonus against very heavy armor ships. So that's its specialty. Also notice the von Neumann there. It builds additional copies of itself, much like the Viral Shredder, and having a self-replicating frigate I think is an interesting, if possibly a little bit strange, idea. Then we have the Pugilist Frigate, disruptive heavy hull, and this main claim to fame is that it's very difficult to destroy. It's got much more hull and shields if you compare it to the other frigates here. It's quite beefy. Gets bonus progressively with the higher armor of its opponents, and a pretty solid armor polarizer weapon, but the durability is definitely what you're looking for here with the Pugilist. And then the Blade Spawner Frigate. This is really an old favorite returning. I think it's interesting that they look, I think, to fair amount different than they did in Classic, but a lot of those things change aesthetically as you move forward into a new game. I might pick one of these up just for nostalgia's purposes, but melee frigate again, so a second one. Heavy hull, and then it's going to shoot out the melee blade drones. That's actually the primary element of its attack. The plasma bolt is just basically so it has a weapon. I think it's fairly low range and not that powerful. And then we have the Strikecraft beginning with Mosquito Corvette, which is really a very annoying type of ship. Notice that it's got reverse tractor beams, so it's able to keep its opponent on the planet. It's going to tractor only one ship, but generally looks like it's going after a larger ship. Then it's hardened against severe damage. This is a disruptive hull type of ship. And it's got the vampirism equal to the damage that it does. And if it has you tractored, it does 7 times damage. So basically it holds on to you and just smashes you with lots of shots that it's going to heal that damage, and then it's going to keep you on the planet, keep you from retreating. But the actual base stats of its weapon, the siphon there, are not impressive at all. So interesting, and I think this would probably be a very annoying ship to run into if you're running a lot of frigate or higher class type of ships. And then we have the Pillager, which is a cloaked ship. Hybrid between disruptive and raid, able to pass through enemy force fields. This is another one that is hardened. It's got the reverse tractor beams again. And we have a high metabolization ability as a key element of its weaponry. And again, it's going to really punish 7 times damage to anybody that's caught in its tractor beam. And we've got a couple of bombard ships. This one, the area effect bombard, so it's able to hit up to 15 targets at once. Artillery and splash, another hybrid type of ship, and a little bit more damage against ships that are low mass, but not a great deal with its plasma torpedoes. Then the Stealth Bombard, a cloaked ship that has that bombardment ability, again hybrid, artillery and raid, again with that bonus to relatively small ships. And then finally the Bouncer, another interesting, annoying one, I think. Artillery only and the medium hull for this one. We've got the bonus against small ships. It's going to be knocking ships back, and it's going to be slowing them down. And if you're too big for it to knock you back, then we've got a nice damage bonus there for that inertial rocket. 3 new map types to introduce. To begin with, we have Crazy Branching. So this might be a bit of a relative of maps like the X, but you've got the central nexus area, and then you've got these branching areas off to the side. You can change how many of them there are. We could go up to 5 here. We could change, for example, how the planet spacing is. So we could maybe make them go a little bit further apart. There's just a lot of different choices in how many we're going to branch off and then what those branches are going to look like. And then we have Dissonance, which can look a lot different based on the connectivity setting, but the basic idea of this one is there are areas with a bunch of stars, and then there's areas that are really empty. Just take a look at a few options here. Now, if we lower the connectivity down, okay, that looks a lot more sensible without those crazy lines going, all over the galaxy at super long distances. And then if we go down to sparse, then it's even more simplified and actually doesn't even look that weird except for the big empty spaces in it. And then finally, we have squares. And this is basically just like the clusters map type, only it's squared off and grid-like as opposed to being a lot more circular. A healthy number of additional AI types, total of 8 more being added with the expansion. And if you look down through this list, it's quite a list now, if you have all the expansions involved. But you get towards the bottom and you notice there's a whole bunch of brutal Zenith Onslaught AI types. And some of them were down in the hard area, but they were bumped up to brutal after experimentation and playtesting and feedback and all of that. So there really was a desire here with Neinzul Abyss to bring that back down, balance it out a little bit more. Half of these are going to be in the moderate category, and so they're not nearly at the painful end, and hopefully can get some more widespread use. The Vanguard is basically a poor man's royal. Gives you lots of guardians, but they're going to be regular guardians, not royal ones. Speedster, well, does what it says on the tin. Fast ships, speed magnifiers. This could be particularly effective, I think, for them if you have very large gravity wells. You're going to be able to move around. They're going to be able to react quickly. But otherwise, pretty standard and straightforward. The Orbital. And this probably is going to be ending up... It's still some balance being worked out with it. But probably going to end up being a more defensive AI type. Got the guard post orbiting the gravity well. And there will also be turrets, etc. orbiting the guard posts themselves, adding to their defenses. Likely to be at least a little bit weaker in some other areas, possibly. And then the border aggression is going to be emphasized with the aggressor AI type. And for those who don't know, border aggression is when they send periodic small attacks unannounced into your border planets. And then we have the Panopticon, getting into the hard area. And probably instead of hard, this possibly should be classified as intensely aggravating. A lot of players find eyes to be annoying, even though there really aren't very many of them in the typical galaxy, only a handful or so. But if you're in that category, if you really like to fleet ball, aren't about the tactical play and the surgical strikes, I strongly advise you to not push the button on this one. You have been warned if you do. Probably a good point in time to talk about some of the new eyes that are available, because some of them are exclusive to Panopticon, but the majority are just a greater diversity that when eyes do appear in the galaxy, they can be used by any AI. So let's take a look at those more generic ones first. Tachyon, that's got decloakers, and it's really going to punish your high albedo ships. There's Gravitic, there's Sabot, really going to punish your high mass ships. The Hive Eye is going to spew out, just like the Hive Golem does, yellow jacket drones to hit you. And then there are a number that mainly throw out other types of ships. There's the Border Aggression one. There's the one that gives Hunter ships, one that gives Warden ships. The Dire Guardian Eye is going to throw out Dire Guardians. And then there's a group of 5 that are Panopticon only that you will not even see unless you're playing the Panopticon AI type and therefore have specifically asked for them. They will throw out daggers for one of them, or Eyebots, which is a fun little pun, but also daggers and Eyebots can be quite difficult to handle in large numbers, so you really don't want to trip these. Then there's the Praetorian War one, which won't throw out a lot of ships, but when it does, what it builds is the Exo War Phoenix unit. You don't want that. And then there's the Dire Plasma Eye, more powerful version of the Plasma Eye, and the Dire Praetorian, giving ships to the Praetorian fleet. But also worth noting is that both of those Dire ones are very resistant to hacking. So if you're going to go around sabotage hacking eyes, well, you're going to pay a very pretty penny for doing that in this case. Unless you've captured the system, and even if you have, it's still expensive. But if you haven't captured the system, yeah, I think the default cost is over 200. You don't want to try to do that. You're going to want to try to do the more conventional and not hacking way of dealing with those eyes. And if they're a particularly tough system, that could really be painful. And that's part of the reason why they're only in the Panopticon AI type. Again, you asked for it if you go in there. Neinzul Enthusiast. So really focusing in on the Neinzul ships makes sense with the Neinzul Abyss. We're going to emphasize younglings and clanlings. They have the Neinzul clusters and nests are defensive structures where they're housing a bunch of Neinzul ships to burst out and attack you if you go into their planet. So they're just going to basically swarm you. And then the Heroic. Templar and Elderling units. Again, adding the additional factions that are present within the expansion to the normal AI types, as has been very successful and popular with the previous expansions. And then our lone one up here is the Skirmisher. Access to Venators from the start of the game. That's not good. So you'd be looking at Venators before you even build anything. Yuck. And also, border aggression is increased to just go along with it. Exciting. So, definitely going to be painful, and I'm kind of curious to see how that one works in action. And that is all she wrote for the Neinzul Abyss expansion. So I hope you've all enjoyed this. Hope it's given you a good idea of what's going to be coming and whether it's something you're going to be interested in. And from here on out, we are going to be beginning then a full Necromancer playthrough with, if I can manage it, all of the other factions from the expansion and possibly some other surprises thrown in. It's going to be a big, chaotic game and really try to show off as much as I can of the expansion in one run. So looking forward to that. As always, any feedback, any suggestions, any questions about all of this, throw them down in the comments below and let me know what I can do better. See you soon.